2.25 miles of the most demanding road racing circuit you'll ever want to experience. And we're here with the IndyCars for the first time. It's race 12 of the 2007 season. With 3 of the final 6 races on road courses, the race to the championship is full of twists and turns. For Scott Dixon, his win at the Glen and victory last week at Music City bring him within reach of Dario Franchitti's summer-long points lead.
That's 3 on the season, and the points leader builds even more momentum.
Team Penske, frustration and emotion have highlighted their season since Indianapolis. A strong finish here will turn their points chase in the right direction. The bad luck continues.
We should have been getting these top 5, top 3 finishes and haven't been able to get the job done.
As the IndyCar Series makes its first stop at Mid-Ohio, the chase for the championship is anything but over. We welcome you live to Mid-Ohio Sports Car Course and thank all of you for joining us here on Firestone Race Day. It is the Honda IndyCar 200 at Mid-Ohio Sports Car Course as we have the drivers getting ready, of course, and we want to thank all of you for following us over to ESPN. Obviously, the British Open going long over across the pond is causing us to start our race over here. And as we get ready now to get you caught up on what's going to happen in the next couple of hours here at Mid-Ohio, we welcome you to Firestone Race Day. And of course, the championship points chase is what everybody is focusing on as we have just a few races left, 6 to be exact. Remember, just a couple of races ago, it was a 67-point lead for Dario Franchitti. It's now down to 34 with Scott Dixon having 2 wins in a row. Let's get more on Dixon from Vince Welch.
Well, Marty, Scott Dixon is the hottest driver in the series, seeking his 3rd straight win here today, and he's doing so on his 27th birthday. Dixon told me just a few moments ago he does feel the pressure to win every race the rest of the season. He says Franchitti is finishing so strong each race that if he doesn't win, he doesn't feel that he'll gain the appropriate points it will take to overtake him in the championship chase. Jack Arute?
Well, what about drivers that aren't in the championship chase anymore, like Elio Castroneves? Well, he gathered it up enough yesterday to sit on another road course pole. But Elio Castroneves is not a happy camper at the wheel of the Team Penske entry. Although he'll start from the #1 position, the car has not been consistent all weekend. It has him very concerned. He told me, I can keep it together for 1 or 2 laps. As far as the full length of this race, I just don't know. Let's check in with Brienne Pedigo.
Thanks, Jack. Well, Danica Patrick came to Mid-Ohio having set a few goals for herself. First was to make it into the fast practice group. Second, make it into the fast 6. Well, she did both of those. The only thing left is to capture that first victory. I spoke with her just before she climbed into the #7, and she said, though a win is a win, winning at a road course would be sweetest of all. She has her best starting position on a road course ever today. She'll start 2nd. Marty?
And in fact, Andretti Green Racing has 4 of the top 5 starting positions. Scott Goodyear, I want to bring you in. Will we see any wingman assistance if, let's say, Dario Franchitti gets up front? Will those 3 help block for him?
Well, there's been some talk about that in the paddock area, and I asked Dario Franchitti this morning after the drivers' meeting, and he said there is no team orders. Each individual driver, we're all out here for a win. That said, you know, it makes you wonder sometimes. He is running for the points championship. If another driver was leading in the team, would they give Dario maybe the heads up? He goes, absolutely not. Not on this team. We're all here to win today for ourselves.
Well, we want to thank you for watching Firestone Race Day. It's now time for those famous words that'll get things started here at Mid-Ohio. Let's go trackside.
And now for the most famous words in motorsports, today's Grand Marshal, Ohio Governor Ted Strickland. Drivers, start your engines.
18 cars come to life, and of course, Helio Castroneves will lead them from the point position as he has got another pole, his 6th this year. In fact, a great weekend so far for Team Penske here at Mid-Ohio. They won the ALMS race yesterday, sweeping the top 2 spots, and a great crowd was on hand for that one as we get ready now to go around this 2.25-mile circuit, and let's give the folks at home an idea of what they're about to experience, Scott.
As Marty, you said, this is one of the most challenging circuits that we have in this country. And as you go along the front stretch here by the start and finish line, you go into turn 1 at speeds of up to 145 miles an hour. Now, this is a great braking zone and a passing zone. Look for drivers to actually turn into that turn, try to dive underneath people. Then up to the keyhole, you're going up to 65 miles an hour slow speed, and then all the way down this fast backstretch, 3,000 feet, and into this right-left combination, which is very difficult. In the back section, very hard to pass. The carousel again, look for some bumping and rubbing in that area there. And also, let's have a look here from what the drivers think about this race
Turn
course
1
here.
is fantastic. It's kind of off camber, and when you come, you just lift and hammer it again, man. That for me, it's awesome.
Heel is one of the most important corners on the track here. You're up into 6th gear, you're carrying some pretty good speed into the corner. Obviously, it's a hairpin type corner. You're down to 2nd gear. You got to slow the car down, but it's important, it's paramount that you get off the keyhole with good acceleration on the throttle early, because really the only passing zone is going into turn 4.
Going into the S's that's one of my favorite parts of this track. It's got kind of a roller coaster feel, that first part to it. Then you turn into 5, you're going up quite a big hill into there, over a crest. There's another different challenge there, completely the opposite from turn 4.
Coming into the carousel in 5th gear, you're going very fast, and it's a corner that's hard to see. It's hard to pick your point because you're sort of going flat, but then the corner drops away a lot.
You're thinking about getting on the throttle as early as possible. It leads onto the 2nd longest straight here on the track. So up 2nd, 3rd, 4th, past the start-finish line, and then you're up into 5th gear, high in the revs, heading down into turn 1.
So you hear it from the drivers as we take a look now at our Honda starting grid and look at the crowd everywhere. You can find a spot. You'll find people here at Mid-Ohio. There you see across the top, and there's Helio Castroneves and Danica Patrick in row number 1. As we go further back, you'll notice a new name, Ryan Hunter-Reay. He has replaced Jeff Simmons. Simmons was released earlier this week. Let's get more on Ryan Hunter from Brianne Pedigo.
Well, Marty, the deal was done on Wednesday. Hunter-Reay got in the car for the first time on Friday. So this has been a very fast turnaround for Rahal Letterman Racing, but the team is confident that Hunter-Reay will be able to give them the results they are looking for. They have had a few hiccups so far this weekend, yesterday with a spin and today as well with a crash, both involving a stuck throttle. The problem was the center panel had gotten stuck, it gotten wedged and caused the throttle to stick. That problem has been resolved, and Hunter-Reay is out. He is confident, and they are ready to go.
You want to talk about hiccups? How about the hiccup for the Delphi Automotive team with Vitor Mira on his qualifying lap, on a lap that he thought would get him into the Firestone Fast 6. And then coming out of the final corner, he crashed and crashed so hard that he'll have to go to the back of the field because they had to totally repair the car, including changing the Honda engine. They changed the engine, they changed the rear, they changed everything, including many key suspension parts in the right front. For Vitor Mira today, well, it's an understatement to say his race will be challenging. Let's check in with Vince.
Well, Jack, one of the favorites today is Marco Andretti. He has turned his season around. He went through a 5-race stretch where his average finish was 18th. Now he's had 3 top 3s in the last 4, or 3 top 5s in the last 4 races, and he has been very quick here all weekend on a circuit that has some similarities to Sonoma, where Marco Andretti picked up his lone IndyCar Series win. His dad, Michael Andretti, and the rest of the AGR team believes that Marco is one of the drivers to beat here today.
He has been good, and it's you see down the long backstretch. In fact, that is the traditional starting line area right there where they're passing right now, turning down into turn number 4, and that will be the start here at Mid-Ohio. And then, of course, you finish at the traditional finish line on the front straightaway. Let's talk a little bit about our onboard cameras. We've got 6 for you. Out the back of pole sitter Helio Castroneves, on board with Vitor Mira and Danica Patrick. Great suspension shot, Scott. Then Scott Dixon, Darren Manning has out the back, and Ryan Hunter-Reay also has an onboard camera. So as we continue the pace lap here, that is the turn 9 section. Let's talk about what we should be watching today.
Well, cars are set up aero versus drag. What I say about this is that if you have lots of downforce on the car, the wings are a little higher, you got lots of grip in the turns, but you won't be going down the straightaway as fast. You get rid of some of that drag by laying the wings down. So we'll have to watch to see what cars have straightaway speed down this 3,000-foot back straightaway and what cars are working better in the turns. Physical strength, all the drivers complaining about the same thing. The turns have been repaved, the concrete is now out, downforce is high, no power steering in these cars. We'll have to see who can actually hold on throughout the 85 laps here today. And track conditions, 4 different races here this weekend. Lots of different rubber down on this race course. Cars are slipping and sliding. It's going to take at least one segment here to put down the Firestone IndyCar rubber, Marty, before they have an opportunity to have the grip that they've been used to in these types of conditions.
So they begin to form up at Mid-Ohio, a track originally built by Les Gribbling and a group of businessmen in the Mansfield area. That was back in the 60s. In the early 80s, Jim Truman, yes, the same one that took Bobby Rahal to victory at Indianapolis. He built this place to what it is today, and now as we get ready to go, the green flag is out at Mid-Ohio. Whoa, got contact. Oh, and up and over. Was that Marco Andretti? It was.
In the same corner that his father ended upside down many years ago in a kart race.
We've got a full course yellow. You can see Marco.
Who is it? You can see
Danica also was involved. Looked like she got bumped to the outside, but looks like she's going to be able to continue. The Delphi safety team moving into position. This is not the first time this year that Marco has been upside down. Of course, remember what happened to him late in the race at Indianapolis.
Locking wheels with Danny Weldon going down the backstretch at 220 miles an hour. That one was a little bit more of a crazy ride, but he said when he got out of the car after that event, he says it was the most scariest moment that he had ever had driving a race car.
I'm also looking for the 11 of Tony Kanaan, because I think it was Tony that might have had the contact. I'm not sure, though. We need to wait for the replay as we wait for the car to come back over on all 4.
Now, as a driver, Marty, you hope they leave the car just as it is. They pull you out before they sort of right the car, because not a whole lot of suspension travel in these types of vehicles here.
All right, Jack, you're with Michael.
Yeah, and thus far, Mike, you haven't had a chance to see the replay. Let's roll it, and you can take a look here.
Waiting.
Yeah, we both are. Because you didn't get to see it. You didn't see what happened, right?
No idea.
Here it comes.
No, the monitor's out, so. Oh, Tony spun. It was Tony's fault. Ah, Jesus.
One more look, Michael.
That one wasn't a good angle. Couldn't tell.
When you say it was Tony's fault, from what perspective?
Not in terms of doing anything wrong. He just lost control, it looks like. Lit him up, and Marco was just a victim. Danica went off.
On board here.
Jesus. Dario lost too.
There's the good news. That's what you wanted to see.
Yeah, that's good.
You've had that experience. You've been in the air here. Not something you wanted to share with your son. What are you going to say to him when you first see him?
There's nothing to say, you know. It wasn't that bad. I think it looked worse than it was, but you know, it's just a big disappointment for the whole team. You know, 3 of our cars are out of it right away.
Guys, it's interesting. Everybody seems to be without their replay monitors down here on pit road, so they're flying blind, literally. And while the pits remain closed, they are relying on whatever we can show them to find out what's happening on the backside of this racetrack.
Yeah, and I think the part that was really hard because of the sun glare, they didn't see. Tony actually had the contact with Danica. That's what sent sent her off to the left, sent him to the right into Marco. So he's right, though. I mean, right now, at least 2 of his cars, one's definitely out. We don't know if Tony has any damage because the pits are closed.
And sometimes this is just a play on numbers. Obviously, Andretti Green has 4 cars here, and they had 4 in the top 5 in qualifying, which is wonderful. But sometimes this actually creates a bit of a problem simply from the fact that everybody's being competitive. And sometimes you think your teammate's going to give you a little bit more space than you actually have. We had a situation at St. Petersburg early in the year where 2 Andretti Green cars got together. So sometimes you're just maybe let your defenses down, Marty, when you go beside a teammate.
All right, we're under our first caution here on a first lap crash involving Marco Andretti. We'll go side by side. Stay with us. We're at Mid-Ohio. The Honda IndyCar 200 brought to you by Honda, proud sponsor of the Indy Racing League IndyCar Series. Firestone, the first name in Indy Racing. And GoDaddy.com, world's #1 .com provider. Make your name with us. There is Marco Andretti's car on the hook heading back towards the garage area here at Mid-Ohio Sports Car Course. You know, we talked about the fact that Michael Andretti has had his moments here. He's had some great ones, but he also has had one disaster. Let's talk about the good news first for Michael. Back in the days when Cart was running here, he won back-to-back in 1990 and again in 91. But there was one memory, as we mentioned, he'd like to forget.
Already had contact with the car going down the fast straightaway, 170 miles an hour into turn 4. Wheels locked, and Michael was just along for the ride, Marty.
There you see the end result. There was Michael as he got out of the car, and he was okay, and there he is today. So as we continue under our first caution, let's get an update on Tony Kanaan and Danica Patrick. Vince?
Well, one of the issues, and I think Jack Arute mentioned it a few moments ago, that the teams down here do not have replay monitors, and that's causing them some problems because they can't see what kind of damage has been done to the race cars, and the communication between team and driver on a road course isn't what it would be on an oval anyway. So let's walk, if you can walk with us here just a second, we'll take you into the pit box with Tony Kanaan's group, and we can show you that they've got a front nose wing assembly ready just in case. The crew is getting ready to go over the wall as soon as the pits open. They'll make the adjustments on the car if necessary, and if they have to, they'll replace this front nose assembly, front wing assembly.
And the pit lane has finally opened, and here comes a gaggle of people that want to take advantage. And one of them, of course, being Tony Kanaan, as they've got to take a look at his car.
Most important thing now is to get the work done correctly. Some teams will put fresh tires on, but you're certainly going to fill the tank up.
Looks like they're happy with the front nose. And they send him back out 6.3 seconds later. Track position we've talked about is extremely important. Here we are. We're working lap number 4 of 85. There's no real benefit here. It's actually going to be a problem for everybody who did stop. It's way too early. You're going to have to fight your way through.
Well, absolutely. And this is going to change your strategy just a little bit. If we have another yellow here very shortly, watch for them to stay out and try to regain track position further towards the front of the grid. And then everybody else will have to come in, and then they'll cycle back through. So it's going to play a strategy game now for a lot of teams up and down pit road. And will we have more yellows? Will play into that strategy? Well, Marty, that's just half the fun of driving a race car around here at Mid-Ohio.
Well, Brienne Pettigo has caught up with Marco Andretti as his car continues its way back towards the garage area. Brienne?
Well, that's right, Marty. We're at the medical center, and Marco Andretti, I first should mention, is okay. Marco, tell us what happened from your perspective on that start.
It's just unfortunate, you know, when people aren't on the restarts. You know, it's not a first time. So I tried to go the outside. There was no room, so I wanted to go the inside. I saw the 2 of them getting out of control and over to the left. So I thought Danica was off the track. So all I did was move all the way over to the right and just try to avoid it. And, you know, it caught me out. So it was a bummer.
It's a disappointing day for Marco, guys, but we're glad to see that although that was a scary upside down, he is okay.
Yeah, and you can see from there, it definitely was Tony getting into Danica that started this whole thing, and then it bounced Tony back to the right into Marco.
And in that situation there, as we mentioned, sometimes sometimes you just feel a little bit more comfortable around your teammate. And this has happened a few times throughout the season with Andretti Green Racing. So I'm sure for the remainder of the season, their defenses will be up. But a lot of switching around after that start. And Darren Manning now is actually shown in third spot. So a great little move up for him aboard the AJ Ford ABC machine. And a road course race. Remember, he had 2 great runs at St. Petersburg and both again at Watkins Glen, only to fall back when he couldn't really hang on to the car because it was so physically demanding, as road courses are, Marty.
And remember, Darren started 8th, so picking up that many spots is very good here at Mid-Ohio. There is Danica Patrick. She just dropped back to 9th after the contact with Tony. We have the radio conversation that she had with the team right after the incident. Let's listen in.
We have no feed here. Are you okay?
I'm still on track. I'm so many cars back, though. I don't know what happened. I got a little bit, I was slid a little bit out of 4, and then I got hit.
Everything feel okay with the car?
A little bit, a couple of weird feelings, but I think overall it was the dirt on the tires and stuff.
Steering wheel straight in a straight line?
Yeah.
Okay, so obviously they're going through a checklist. They can't see the monitors, as we've pointed out, courtesy of the gang down in pit lane. So they're trying to go through the Braille method almost to figure out if they've got a car that they needed to bring in, and they kept her out.
Absolutely. As a driver, you go through a checklist yourself just to make sure that everything is A-OK. Now, this restart we're going to have back on the actual front start line where the start and finish line is for most events, Marty.
Green flag, starter, green flag.
And we're back to green flag racing here at Mid-Ohio. Scott Dixon right behind Elio Castroneves. Remember, Dixon started 6th, has moved up to 2nd, and he's trying to take over the race lead.
And Elio a little slow coming into the first turn up towards the keyhole. Smartly runs up the middle of the road, not giving much room to Scott Dixon, who's running in 2nd.
Well, the thing about the onboard shots you'll see, watch how much hand movement these drivers are going through. They are wrestling these cars. This is a much more demanding course than we were on a couple of weeks ago at Watkins Glen.
Absolutely, and you see again, Castroneves running down the middle of the road, sort of protecting both lines until he gets these tires up to temperature and up to pressure. The cars move around a lot. You saw Scott Dixon fighting the steering wheel there again. When the tires have brought the pressures up and the temperature up, the cars are a little bit more easier to drive. And I say that, but this course is so up and down, Marty. It's like sort of driving around on top of a roller coaster.
There you see the points leader, Dario Franchitti. He is running in 4th position right now. Right behind him is Sam Hornish. Right in front of Franchitti, of course, is Darren Manning, who made that big move from 8th to 3rd during that first lap melee.
Now, Darren Manning's not in the fight for the championship, but he's certainly in the fight for a podium finish or a win, so he's not going to give any room over to Darren Manning whatsoever, to Dario Franchitti whatsoever. Now, Dario's run here before, has finished 3rd, running a kart car here. He knows his way around this course. Very strong competitor, but many laps left to go.
So for a moment, the onboard view over the suspension of Danica Patrick as she head down the back straightaway. She is still running in 9th. And she's losing a little contact with Thomas Schechter. Back behind there is Buddy Rice trying to duck underneath. Trying to pick up another position, can't get it done. Meanwhile, here's the battle up front coming through turn 9.
Difficult turn. You go over the brow, the car falls away underneath you as the road is falling, so you sort of go with the car slides out, then you sort of blast yourself up to 10, 11, and 12. This is what we know as the carousel right now, a very tight turn going through there all the way up to turn 13 back onto the front stretch.
Let's get more on 3rd place Darren Manning from Jackaroo.
Well, guys, uncharacteristically of the way most of these drivers run this course and other road courses, Darren Manning says his style is charging, and what he means by that, Scott, as you know, is he goes into the corner very, very hard and then is hard on the brakes, especially in the high-speed corners. He said it provided for A.J. Foyt and the ABC supply team a bit of a challenge, but the testing that they did here, they've been able to adjust the car. He likes it. In fact, he says that this could be the day that they score their first podium finish.
And we can tell you, Darren Manning has just set the fastest lap of the race at 1 minute 11.4 seconds. So he is definitely, shall we say, on his horse.
And a bit of a revival for him in his career. Remember, he used to drive for the Target Chip Ganassi team and then was released. And now he's had his opportunity for AJ Foyt Racing. And he just wants to make sure he continues growing with the team. They've made a lot of changes in that team throughout the winter months, and they've actually added a lot of personnel, and the team continues to improve.
Let's drop back a little further in the field. As you see the field coming through the carousel, there's Danica Patrick. She is still running a ninth, but the man we want to focus on is Tony Kanaan. He fell back to 17th after the contact in the pit stop. He has now moved up to the 13th position and is closing quickly on Vitor Mira. Vince, what's the story?
Tony Kanaan likes his race car despite that little bit of contact with Marco Andretti in the early going. Kanaan felt very comfortable here in practice yesterday. Did not like his car in the qualifying. Said they got a little too aggressive, but it was good again in practice. So this morning, so keeping an eye on Tony Kanaan. They just came to him on the radio, said you're much faster than Vitor Mira. As you get the look outside from the back of Mira's car, put him away when you get the opportunity.
Well, he's run Mid-Ohio 5 times before. His best finish was 5th back in 2001. He's got his work cut out for him today as he's on the attack with Vitor Mira, his next victim in sight. Helio Castroneves continues up front. We'll go side by side. Back here at Mid-Ohio Sports Car Course, where Helio Castroneves continues to lead. He's now led 6 of the 9 road course races in IndyCar Series history, but he also has 4 DNFs. And of course, this year's been a microcosm of both those scenarios, as he has led all 12 laps so far today, and he's also had victory and a DNF earlier this year on road course races. In fact, let's take you back to those events. First up, St. Petersburg.
Just had a great car and was fast all day and took the checkered flag and got to climb the fence in St. Petersburg.
Then the frustration of Watkins Glen, where he was out in front but balled it up in the final corner. The frustration visible. Take a look at the tale of 2 seasons for Helio Castroneves this year in 2007. As it has had its moments of glory, but it's had its moments of despair.
And as a driver, you push hard all the time, and that's what Helio was doing at Watkins Glen when the back end just slipped out a bit from him, trying to push his car maybe a little faster than it was capable of going that particular day. Jack Arute, you can add more?
Well, Scott, remember, Helio started this race and really wasn't sure what he had in that last practice session this morning. They were not at all happy with the car. They couldn't get the consistency. Well, the changes that Tim Cindric to the Team Penske operation made to Helio Castroneves, his car has been like hitting a golf ball right down the middle of the fairway. He loves his car. He says that all of a sudden, not only is it consistent, it's fast.
And don't forget that the track conditions have changed throughout the day, because the endurance race that we had yesterday afternoon put a lot of different rubber down on the course. A lot of drivers were complaining in warm-up this morning they didn't know what they had. But as the Indy Pro race was out there, and now these cars have been out here running a little bit more, the track does change. Cars are tuned to the racetrack, and great for Team Penske to make a great selection on what that car needed.
Jack, I really appreciate you making the reference to golf. Obviously, the British Open is what has us over on ESPN as that continues. We're glad that all of you were able to find us and follow us as we are working lap 13 of 85, now 14 of 85 here at Mid-Ohio Sports Car Course, where it's been all Helio Castroneves so far. Coverage of the Senior British Open returns to ABC Saturday, July 28th. Defending champion Lauren Roberts, Tom Watson, among others, head to Scotland to battle Muirfield. The Senior Open Championship, Saturday, July 28th, 2:30 Eastern on ABC. And final round coverage Sunday, July 29th at 1 Eastern. Here at Mid-Ohio Sports Car Course, it is still Helio Castroneves leading Scott Dixon by about a half a second. Darren Manning is third. Dario Franchitti is in fourth. Sam Hornish Jr. rounds out your top 5. And in 6th place is Ryan Hunter-Reay. That's right, the replacement named earlier this week for Jeff Simmons. Simmons, the best he could do in that car all year was 6th. And Bobby Rahal had finally said, I've seen enough. Gave him his papers and brought in Ryan Hunter-Reay, but this is what happened. We were talking about this right at the beginning of the broadcast. This was the first time the throttle stuck.
And he said on the radio after that, and along with the program that he had this morning going into the tire barrier, that in both those situations, he went to get the brake and the throttle was actually applied at the same time. As we had the report from Brian Pedigo, there was something loose in the panel, from what we believe, that they ended up having a situation where the throttle pedal stuck going into the turn.
And Brienne, he talked about goals earlier this week, and he's within reach of them right now.
Well, guys, he is really happy with his race car right now. He's complaining of zero vibration, which was a concern considering all of the repairs they had to do early this morning after that crash. He's expected to pit around lap 28, but guys, imagine he's in a new ride. This is the first time he's racing in the IndyCar Series. That's a lot of pressure. And to top that off, his new boss, David Letterman, came out to see how his new hire is doing.
And that goal we were talking about was to finish in the top 7 in this race. So far, he's running 6. Speaking of David, there he is. Don't know if it'll make the top 10 list. It would if he wins the race, I guarantee you that.
Well, a very different car than what Ryan Hunter-Reay's been driving here for the last little while. He's been driving in the Grand Am Series, a body car endurance racing. Very different than this single-seat open-wheel car that he's got right now. And a little lighter and a little bit more horsepower, so certainly a different ride than he's been used to.
Well, let's eavesdrop on what the team spoke about to Ryan before the race started.
All right, guys, thanks for up to this point. I appreciate it. I'll go out there and do my best. I'll push hard the whole time, and I got all that stuff out of my mind. We got answers to it, so it's all good.
There was his conversation, as he has raced here at Mid-Ohio before. In fact, finished 3rd back in 2003.
Aboard a kart car, very similar cars to this, but they are different no matter what type of car they are. And when you haven't been sitting in a seat in one of these things, like I mentioned this season, driving the Grand Am cars, boy, it's a great job that he's doing here this weekend.
And as we look from high above, there is the race leader, Helio Castroneves, out in front of Scott Dixon by half a second. That's what it looks like from high above. Darren Manning still 3rd, and Vitor Mira, as we move a little further back, has gotten around Kosuke Matsuura to take over the 11th spot, and he's closing in on Thomas Schechter. In fact, it looks like he got past Thomas, and he did.
Last call, keep quiet, last call.
And Vitor Mira drives for the Panther team, and they just had an announcement this year that the Indy Pro Series driver Hideki Muta, who's actually 24 years old, will actually be joining them at the last race at Chicagoland in an IndyCar. So there's been lots of rumors that he may be a replacement for Kosuke Matsuura. That's not been confirmed, but that's been the rumor going around, and I've been watching this battle going on between Kosuke and the number 11 car, the 711 machine of Tony Kanaan. And usually that would not be a contest, but I gotta say that Kosuke is driving the wheels off the car this weekend and seems to be putting an effort out each and every lap. And not ragging on him, say he generally doesn't do that, but he's not a driver that really puts the whole race together in most cases.
All right, and there is Tony Kanaan. Let's get more from Vince Welch.
Well, remember when they came in for that pit stop after the contact with Marco Andretti and Danica Patrick, they elected not to change the front nose assembly. There was some cosmetic damage on the left side of that front wing, or screen right, as you're looking at the car as it comes to you, but it looked as though it was just a tire print on top of the car, top of that wing. No actual structural damage, but maybe that's having a little impact on the handling of Tony Kanaan's car, although he's not indicated such on the radio.
Well, we'll keep an eye on it, but I think you're right, Vince. I don't think there's anything obviously visible on the race car, and I think it's just the nature of Mid-Ohio. It is a tough place to pass on. If you make any kind of mistake, you open the door for the guy behind you, but otherwise you make it very difficult for anyone to get around. Well, while all this continues, Helio Castroneves has led all 16 laps so far. We're going to go side by side as you see Scott Dixon trying to track him down. Back here at Mid-Ohio Sports Car Course, there's the top 5. They've sort of opened up a nice lead over the rest of the field. It is Castroneves, Dixon, Manning, Franchitti, and Sam Hornish Jr. Yep, Sam coming off his career best road course finish back at Watkins Glen, doing very well here in the early goings of this event. And let's get some pit strategy, because we're getting close to the first stop for all these guys, Jackaroo.
Yeah, indeed we are, Marty, and here is the the problem or the challenge faced by these top 5 cars. Conventional wisdom tells you that what the leader does, you need to follow suit. But Roger Penske, as he is so apt to do, has decided that he's going to lead with his number 6 car. Sam Hornish Jr. will pit on lap 28. He will come in, they'll make service, and then they will call the leader. Helio Castroneves in on lap 29. They were able to increase the window just a little bit due to that first lap caution period.
All right, thanks, Jack. As those top 5 continue, we just saw across the top of the screen where Dan Weldon has recorded the fastest race lap. He's running in 7th. He started 11th. As you see the top 5 come flying through, here comes Ryan Hunter-Reay in 6th, and a closing Dan Weldon. So Weldon starting to get the bit between his teeth.
And for a team that actually, and a driver that really thought would dominate after the opening days at Homestead, but certainly haven't done that. Now, the Target team has 23 starts here in 13 races back in the kart days, and they've actually won here a few times, 96 and 97 with Alex Zanardi, and in 99 with Juan Pablo Montoya, who had some fame in Formula One and then is now over in Chip Ganassi's NASCAR team. And Vince, you have more on Dan Weldon?
Well, Scott, this is something you can relate to as a former driver, I'm sure. Weldon says you've got to find a car that's comfortable, just a car, especially on a road course, a car that works for you as much as you can work for it. And he said it just had not been able to find that up until this point. But I just spoke with team owner Chip Ganassi a moment ago, and Weldon loves his car, according to Chip, and they're very happy with the way he's running. Remember, he started 11th. He's already up a handful of positions.
And Vince, that's a great feeling to have, especially here at Mid-Ohio, which is such a challenging course. But as we know, it's tough to make up time here. It's tough to pass. And most importantly is to have a great in-lap and a great out-lap when you're coming up for your pit stops. And you heard 3 laps for Dan Weldon before he has to come into pit lane. So he'll be pushing extra hard here now just to try to make up even about a second if he can, just so he can maybe come out in front of other competitors who are having the service work done in the pits at the same time, Marty.
And of course, right behind Weldon is the number 7 of Danica Patrick. She is running in the 8th position, trying to reel him in. Remember the last time these two got real close, it was back in Milwaukee, and it wasn't a happy ending.
Led to a push and a shove, but no fines like we saw at Watkins Glen between Tony Kanaan and Sam Hornish Jr.
There you can see the interval for Danica. And that 7 seconds is from Helio Castroneves, the race leader. That's the margin from 1st back to 8th right now. And the Firestone telemetry shows you what gear she's in, and she's hard on the throttle right now. So as we go stepping aside here, we're getting ready for pit stops when we come back to Mid-Ohio, as it's the Honda IndyCar 200. Mid-Ohio Sports Car Course, you saw on the side-by-side where Koski Matsura's already pitted. So is Thomas Schechter, Vitor Mira, and Ryan Hunter-Reay. So that means Dan Weldon has moved up. There is Vitor. He has been shown now in 10th. And quickly, let's get an update on his stop from Jack Arute.
Marty, no changes. Just an exchange of 4 Firestone tires and some more ethanol in the 22-gallon tank. Vitor Mira likes his ride. He pits early, trying to use the pit position of pitting early to give him an advantage when the rest of the leaders pit, that he can advance a little further up the field.
Sometimes that strategy pays big dividends. Sometimes it hangs you out. We're still waiting for the race leaders, though, to blink.
Well, what he's trying to do is put some new tires on earlier than everybody else, as we now see Darren Manning peel off into the pits. And in that situation, the car grips just a little bit better, and you hope that you're ahead.
You're here. Come on down. You're here.
There's AJ giving Darren Manning the information you're here, but you hope that that grip gives you an opportunity to turn around and go a little quicker on the track than the other group.
Jack?
Remember, this is the Darren Manning, AJ Foyt team as we look at the fueler working on the ABC supply car. They, too, have made no changes. Manning had an issue with the shifting linkage in the last practice, but he did all right in that pit stop, guys.
And we can tell you that Dan Weldon is pitted, so is Danica Patrick. They're both in the pit lane. In fact, Danica is making her way back out onto the track. So the race order is going to shuffle here, but not up front yet. It is still Castroneves, Dixon, and now Franchitti 3rd, Sam Hornish 4th.
Now, Castroneves and Dixon are running identical speeds right now, identical times, but what's happening inside the cockpit of Elio Castroneves' car is he's pushing as hard as he possibly can to try to build that gap between himself and Dixon, so when they do come in the pit lane, he's got a little bit more of a cushion to get the service work done and exit.
So it is Elio coming in. Now, this is the one where Dixon really has to hammer down and get a good lap here, and now the pressure's on the Penske pit crew. Let's see what happens.
It's all up to Rick Ronneman's crew as they go over the wall and go to work. No changes for Elio Castroneves, despite being challenged in the last practice. Didn't even air pressures. A quick stop. Meanwhile, his teammate Sam Hornish also trying to follow the red and white car out of Elio Castroneves, but Dario Franchitti will get out in front of Sam.
All right, so now the drama continues to unfold, and Dixon, you better believe, is digging like crazy. And there is Dario Franchitti as he continues his way around this 2.25-mile circuit. The points leader doesn't want to make any mistakes. That's his biggest mantra for the day.
Oh, he certainly has to make sure he stays on track as smooth. There's Scott Dixon going over that very tough turn number 9, uses the curbing on the exit, trying to squeeze the throttle as soon as you possibly can through there, Marty, to carry speed through this next segment, because any time that you can gain anywhere on this racetrack is a bonus. And here it is, his turn for the pit lane.
All right, so on lap 29, he brings it in. Vince, he's heading your way.
Straight in, Scott.
Scott Dixon is being communicated with by Mike Hall, who handles the race strategy, telling him straight in. There's no traffic prior to a stop. There will be no chassis changes here. And remember, Dixon has lasted a lap longer than Elio Castroneves, who came in. Ricky Davis, the crew chief, you're looking at his helmet cam there as he changes the right front, and it's a smooth stop for Dixon back out.
And now the question is, will he be out in front of Elio Castroneves? And I think the answer is going to be yes.
Well, now he's got to get up to speed as quick as possible. Remember, low tire pressures, cold tires, the car moves around a lot on you, especially here going through the keyhole. It's hard to get back on the gas. Remember, the rear tires want to spin, but his job as a driver is to get going as quickly as possible, take at least a lap for those tire temperatures and pressures to come up where the car is again comfortable to drive.
Now, the reason we're showing Tony Kanaan is he is the race leader, but remember, he has not stopped. Remember, he stopped early when we had that first caution, so he can go a few more laps, but he is going to cycle back into the field when he makes his second pit stop in a matter of a few laps.
What a great racetrack here, Marty. Up and down, blind corners. You have to have a lot of smoothness, a lot of rhythm to be able to make this track work for you. Drivers love it. Very challenging. When your car works great, it's a fun race, but when your car does not work very well for you, understeer, oversteer, all in the same lap, then it becomes very ugly to drive around here for 85 laps.
There's the margin back from first to second. And you heard on the radio, pit this lap. That's for Tony Kanaan. Jack, you've got more?
Yeah, what Scott Goodyear was talking about, every driver told me before the start of this race, the biggest challenge with this place is the way the elevations work. And what they mean by that, unlike Watkins Glen and unlike Infineon, some of the hills that you have, Scott, and you know, you alluded to it like being like on a roller coaster, you get negative G's. The car gets real light on you.
And a lot of times you want to continue pushing that throttle, Jack, just to gain a little bit more time in the turn. And it's sometimes a risk-reward ratio if you're going to drive off the edge of the race course. If you mess up the turn, you slow the turn up, you slow your speed up, and you just really hurt your lap.
That was Sarah Fisher in the 5 car going a lap down. She's already been passed by Tony Kanaan. Kanaan into turn 11, heading for a carousel, and he'll peel off to pit lane this time.
Okay, any changes? No. Okay, 4 tires full of the fuel.
Vince, it's all yours.
Well, they just communicated with TK about whether or not there would be any changes. He requested none, so it'll be just the 4 Firestones and fuel. All of the in and out laps have been addressed with Jack and Scott, and Tony said that is the key here. The pit stops are so intense, you've got to get a good in and out lap. That will make you positions on a track that is very difficult to pass on, and Kanaan will be focusing on that throughout the course of the day today.
So the ethanol pit clock showed 8.4 seconds. As you heard, the team said you're clear behind, but but as you can see, he's not clear up ahead any longer.
And the job for Tony now, as we mentioned, just get up to speed as quickly as possible. You focus on the car that's in front of you because that's your next target, that's your next victim. And in a road course, you push on each and every turn, getting the power down, getting into the braking zone. Right now for Dario Franchitti, he's squeezing the throttle, clicking up the gear, going up through this left-right, great section through here. The track falls away on you, track rises, get to the apex, the track falls down, and here's where you got to get back on the gas and carry the speed up through the next segment.
Well, if you're target Chip Ganassi's team, you got to be patting yourself on the back. You gave your driver, Scott Dixon, the race lead because he dug deep on the in and out laps, and then they did the job in pit lane, and as a result, Scott Dixon is your race leader. Helio Castroneves is second, Dario Franchitti third, Sam Hornish fourth, Darren Manning fifth. Back here at Mid-Ohio Sports Car Course, look at the crowd. That's the keyhole. This place is just jammed. We're on board with the race leader. He has got a 3.2-second lead over Helio Castroneves, and he has got the hammer down.
Right through the Keep, which is about 155 miles an hour, up to turn 4, which is 165 to 175 miles an hour, and then you're up to turn 5, up over the brow, and back through those back S's. Now he's being chased by Helio Castroneves and Dario Franchitti. Now, as we know, Scott Dixon's second in the points. He's very aware where Dario Franchitti is right now, and as a driver, Marty, you're sitting here calculating how many points you're going to gain on your closest competitor when you're in this situation.
Well, and this is what Dario Franchitti didn't want to see, because now the 50 points that go with first place are currently sitting in Scott Dixon's lap. As you look at the Firestone telemetry, he's back in third. That's not what he wants, so he's going to start pressing the hammer a little bit harder as well. Let's ride along for a lap. We've just gone on to turn 1.
Good number, Scott. That's a good number.
He's being so smooth, but as we all know around the paddock area, when the car's looking smooth and the driver's in control, that's when the fast laps happen. When the car's sliding around and the driver's really busy inside the cockpit working that steering wheel, that's when the lap times take a little longer to get around the road course, like here at Mid-Ohio.
You're looking at Ryan Hunter-Reay, and he is in front of Tony Kanaan. This is a battle for ninth, so through the pit stops, you can see that Kanaan's advantage of staying out those extra laps has helped him pick up a few more spots. Remember, he was 17th after the crash. Ryan Hunter-Reay lost 3 positions in the pit exchange as Kanaan takes a look underneath in the keyhole, and he goes to the curb and can't get it done as Ryan slams the door.
What a great move by Ryan. He wasn't going to let Tony Kanaan get by that easily on the inside, but right now, Ryan Hunter-Reay's mirrors say closer than appear for the objects that he's going to look and see, because Tony Kanaan is filling both mirrors on his car.
So Kanaan loses a little momentum. You remember Scott Sharp's description. You come out of that keyhole and you have to have a good clean exit because that's the longest straightaway, and it showed right there. He could not get back up close enough. Now he's going to have to follow him for a while.
And Marty, I think this really shows also how important qualifying is here at a road course. All the drivers talked about that before we arrived here, also at St. Pete's and Watkins Glen, because when you get back here, even though you might be a little bit quicker than the car in front, it is very difficult to pass when a driver is very competitive like Ryan Hunter-Reay.
All right, so while this battle continues, let's point out the fact that Scott Dixon is lapping at 108 and change. Everybody else is at 109, and he's got a 4.1 second lead now over Helio Castroneves. That is into turn 4. Up over the rise. You get a look from down high above. Tight turns here at Mid-Ohio. While we've got an opportunity, why don't we take you up to speed? Start with our race leader, Vince Welch. You're up.
Well, Scott Dixon has been terrific today, and his crew has been excellent as well. They got him out in first place after that pit stop. Remember, Dixon has won 3 of the last 6 road course events, and he's been runner-up in 2 others. This is his forte, and he's putting down the hammer. Mike Hall communicating to him from the timing stand, you're fast and you're saving fuel. Way to go. Jackaroo?
Well, the fellow that won the opening road course event in St. Pete trails Scott Dixon, but he has had more than his share of woes on road courses since then, as we documented. But not today. Helio Castroneves has found a rhythm, although it is not strong enough to put an all-out assault on your leader, Scott Dixon. Vince?
Well, in third place is the points leader, Dario Franchitti. He has won 3 times this season, the Indianapolis 500, and then the short ovals at Iowa and Richmond. Known as a road course specialist, Dario has yet to win on a road course, but he's got plenty of experience here at Mid-Ohio. He's raced Indy-style cars 6 times here at this circuit, and he likes it. He also likes his car. No changes during that first stop. Jack?
And the man in 4th position. Pardon me if Sam Hornish Jr. no longer wants to be referred to as an oval expert. I chatted at length with Sam earlier this weekend, and he said, you know, I feel a lot like Rick Mears did. I was able to be so good on the ovals that people expected the same sort of performance on the road courses. He's very proud of his performances this season on road courses, and said to me, it's all been about extending his seat time. Directly behind Sam Hornish, though, is a man who would just simply like to win anything. Darren Manning driving for the legendary A.J. Foyt in his golden anniversary of IndyCar competition. A.J. has given Darren Manning a very solid car, a car that has found a balance today. The big question mark, will Manning's arms give out the way they did at Watkins Glen?
Well, Jack, Danica Patrick is right behind Darren Manning. Patrick is running in 6th, and many believed with her number 2 starting position today that maybe this was going to be the day that she found victory lane for the first time. But she was slow on the start. That caused an incident with teammates Tony Kanaan and ended up putting Marco Andretti on his top. So it's not been a good day so far for Danica Patrick, but she's regained her composure. The car is handling, and she's moving her way back up toward the front. Danica Patrick, this is her 9th road course event in the IndyCar Series. Her average finish is 11th. Dan Weldon is right behind Patrick in 7th. Remember, Weldon has not been happy with his race car here this weekend, but he found a little something in the morning practice, and he has definitely been pleased with the way it has been handling here in the race. I spoke with Chip Ganassi earlier. They said no changes on that initial pit stop. He's riding around very comfortably. Jack?
And running in the 9th position, a team that all of a sudden is beginning to show some muscle, with Buddy Rice being signed as a teammate to Sarah Fisher this year. Rice, who was born and bred on go-karts and on ovals, on road courses, says that one of the things that has made the change for his team this year is the addition of some additional aerodynamic parts and pieces. Nothing major, just enough to be able to route the air, but on road courses, they have concentrated extensively on getting the braking correctly. Vince?
Well, and right behind is Tony Kanaan. There you see him in the number 11 car, the 711 machine, and it's been an eventful day for Kanaan as he touched with Danica Patrick and also Marco Andretti on the start. You know, he crashed out last week at Nashville trying to make a pass on the outside, ended up finishing in last place. Marco Andretti came up to him afterwards and said, I was glad to see that. Now I know that you are human. Even TK makes mistakes. Kanaan says he doesn't want to make those mistakes anymore. Brianne Pettigo?
Well, Ryan Hunter-Reay currently in 10th position. That's the same position where he started today's race. Ryan came here for the first time when he was 10 years old. He started watching IndyCar races at Mid-Ohio with his father. It was his dream to race in this series at this track, and he's accomplishing it today. He's happy with this car. That last pit stop, they made no changes to the car except for a small increase in tire pressure. He is happy and is looking for that proud finish for Rahal Letterman Racing. Marty, Scott?
And he's doing very well considering he didn't even see the cockpit of this car until this weekend. And he's motoring in 10th right now with Vitor Meira 11th, Thomas Scheckter 12th, Koski Matsura 13th, AJ Foyt the 14th, and Scott Sharp rounding out the top 15. Meanwhile, while all this has been going on, Scott Dixon has lengthened his lead a little bit more. It's now up to 4.9 seconds over Helio Castroneves. And you can see the gap all the way back to the start-finish line as Dixon comes through turn 1.
He'll just keep on pushing, try to extend that space between himself and Helio Castroneves. But right now, there's a lot of good things going on inside the drivers' minds. Usually on an oval track, you have the option of using a weight jacker and also roll bar adjustments to sort of help your car improve on the racetrack itself. Well, here on a road course, they don't use the weight jacker. They don't move the weight around in the car. And they don't have, a lot of teams don't have the roll bars hooked up. So really, sometimes there's no driver aids inside the cockpit for these drivers to help tune their car to the track conditions. So as they continue to run, the engineers watch the telemetry. They see what the cars are doing. We heard some increased tire pressures on the 17 car of Ryan Hunter-Reay. Well, that's really just about all the changes you can do here during a pit stop, along with some wing changes on the front to try to tune your car to the track conditions here at Mid-Ohio today.
Okay, while all this is going on, we should inform you the British Open has concluded. Padraig Harrington won the playoff, and we are going to be switching over to ABC at the top of the hour. The Champ Car race will be taking over on ESPN. So that's what will be coming up here very shortly as we continue here as we're working lap 43 of 85. So coming up next here on ESPN, you'll see the Champ Car Rexall Grand Prix from Edmonton. This race, the Honda IndyCar 200, will continue on ABC, and you'll be able to join us there for the conclusion of this race, the Honda IndyCar 200 from Mid-Ohio Sports Car Course. And for all of you on ABC, I'm Marty Reed, along with Scott Goodyear, Jack Arute, Brian Pettigo, and Vince Welch. And we welcome you to our coverage of the Honda IndyCar 200 as we are working lap 43 of 85. We're just going to have to scold Padraig Harrington and Sergio Garcia for getting into that playoff situation. We had to start the race without you, unless you came over to ESPN. We're with us there. Hope you did. Glad that you're with us now as we are watching Scott Dixon lead Helio Castroneves by 5.2 seconds. Dario Franchitti, to the points leader, is third. Sam Hornish Jr. is fourth in the number 6 Penske machine. Then it's Darren Manning rounding out the top 5.
All these drivers have had one round of pit stops so far, had an opportunity to make some tire pressure adjustments or wing adjustments if they chose. Here's a great battle going on right now. Tony Kanaan, remember, he qualified up front, had that bump on the very first turn with Danica Patrick. Ended up going in through the grass and also touched with Marco Andretti. There's a big collision there, and now he's trying to march his way back through the pack. And he's been trailing Buddy Rice here for a few laps and not been able to get by.
In fact, we have a race recap for you to get you caught up on everything you might have missed if you stayed watching the British Open while we started the race here at Mid-Ohio, because the fireworks started right on the very first lap. Watch Tony Kanaan, third car. He gets into Danica Patrick and then goes hard into Marco Andretti. Marco goes upside down for the second time this year. He climbs out. He's okay, but his day is done. That means Helio Castroneves, he got the lead early, kept it, and just kept driving and driving and driving, and led most of the early laps. That is until great pit strategy by Scott Dixon team, and a hard lap going in and out of the pits got him the race lead, and that's where we are right now. You can see how hard he's driving. That is turn 9, and that falls away from you, and you feel like your stomach's going to leave you, and sometimes the car leaves you behind.
They call this racetrack very close to like riding on a roller coaster. I remember when I used to drive here, you had to time the corner perfectly on the entrance, because if you had to tighten up the steering wheel on the exit, if you were ready to run on a road, you had the back end sort of swing around on you like we saw with Scott Dixon. That being said, he's just burning off laps here faster than everybody else. He seems to continue to stretch his lead, and when things are going your way and things are smooth, you just keep on pushing.
You saw the Honda lap leaders, and remember, you get 3 bonus points for leading the most laps, and with Scott Dixon closing in on that mark, that's important in the championship battle, because as things run right now, as you continue to watch Tony Kanaan do battle with Buddy Rice. That is for 8th on the racetrack. The battle for the championship could be cut by as much as another 18 points if it stays the same, with Dixon in front and Franchitti in third.
Spoke to Buddy.
Oh, no! And another crash involving, it looked like one of the Team Penske cars, and it's Sam Hornish. Here on lap 46, we have our second caution coming out. So Sam, who was running in 4th, is off the racetrack, and that looks like the exit of number 1. And it is.
A very fast turn, number 1. You're entering at 145 miles an hour. Click through to 4th gear. You want to get back on the gas as quickly as possible to get a run up that side straight. Let's see if we can find out what exactly happened to Sam. Well, that's very early in the turn, so he did not even get to the center of the turn or the apex. So let's see if we have an opportunity to catch that a little bit sooner. There you go. You can see the gravel trap or the sand trap going and rubbing against the tire barrier there. Now, not a lot of damage done to that car. If he can pull that car out and get it restarted, he might be able to rejoin the field.
Jack, you've got more from pit lane?
Yeah, Scott. In fact, that's what Roger Penske just radioed to him after debriefing, and you can see that Sam was waving his arms. He just wants to be bump started, wants to get back to pit road. They're prepared to change the rear wing if need be. But right now, the frustration for Sam Hornish is the car is not wounded enough for him to be out of the race, but it needs to get started, and he has to wait on the track crew.
Well, very frustrating time as a driver. I've been through this where you're sitting there waiting for the Delphi crew to come and assist you. But number 1A, they have to get to the turn first off. But track also has to go yellow. And Brian Barnhart, the president of the IRL, will make sure that the track is completely yellow and all the drivers are aware of where that particular car is before he puts any of the Delphi safety crew out at risk.
All right, so there's our race leaders. We're going to go side by side. We're under our second caution here at Mid-Ohio with Scott Dixon leading Helio Castroneves and the points leader, Dario Franchitti. The Honda IndyCar 200 brought to you by Honda, proud sponsor of the Indy Racing League IndyCar Series, and Farmers Insurance. To find an agent near you, call 1-800-FARMERS. And we are under our second caution here at Mid-Ohio Sports Car Course with a tremendous crowd on hand. Michelle Truman and her entire crew have done an amazing job getting this place prepared for this big event, and they have not been disappointed, the fans, as here we go as the pit stops are coming. And let's send it to Vince, or Jack, I think you're going to be up first.
Well, because Helio Castroneves will be the first to his pit box. Now, Tim Cindric has already told him they had a little bit of a debate as to whether to short pit or not. And he said, no, we still need to take on a full load of fuel. So they're going to go to work there. Let's see what's going on with Scott Dixon.
There you see the work on Scott Dixon's car. Ricky Davis with the helmet cam, and it's another great stop for the Target Chip Ganassi crew, led by Ricky Davis, the crew chief. And what an interesting perspective there with that helmet cam. You see it up close.
Yeah, but I'm not sure that they're going to be as thrilled as you think, because they lost the lead. Helio Castroneves was the first off pit road. Dixon was second off pit road. Now remember, Tony Kanaan stayed out, and we're also told that Sam Hornish stayed out, and he may get the way by and get back on the lead lap. We're going to step aside for another break. We'll go side by side. We'll double check everything. When you come back, you'll know exactly what's happening. ABC Tuesday, America is rolling over with laughter at this summer's hidden camera hit. This summer, the joke's on you. All new, just for laughs. Tuesday, 8, 7 Central, only on ABC. And we're back just in time to go back to Green Flag Racing, and Tony Kanaan, who stayed out, as did Scott Sharp, are now the race leaders. Then it's Helio Castroneves, Scott Dixon, and Dario Franchitti rounding out your top 5.
Now, Castroneves, remember, he pitted under this yellow, so on lap 49, the others pitted on lap 32. So they're going to hope for a yellow. Comes up here very shortly, so they don't get caught having to pit underneath green flag conditions.
Well, Kanaan is getting away from Scott Sharp, and look at the dicing going on in behind. We can also tell you Sam Hornish did pit, so he is still a lap down. But let's talk a little strategy on Helio Castroneves. Jack Arud, how did he manage to get out front?
Marty, the first thing you got to do is you got to use all your tools. They used radio transmissions to try and throw a dummy. I know you were discussing not short pitting, and then all of a sudden you decide to short pit. Surprise, it worked.
Hey, we'll see. It's not over yet, but you know, this game's all about track position. Sometimes you got to roll the dice, and we'll see how it plays out here. It could go either way, but we want.
How long can you go before you have to come back in?
I think we can go somewhere in the mid-70s still. So we're about 10 laps short from going to the end, so we'll see what happens.
Let's find out more about one of the guys that didn't pit with Vince Welch. Vince?
Well, and George Klotz handles the strategy for Tony Kanaan. George, you guys elected to stay out. You've got a few extra laps, but how much do you believe you're rolling the dice?
Not really bad. I like our position right now. We got one stop to go, so do the other guys behind us. Right now we're concentrating on just putting a gap between us and them. And hopefully we can make our last pit stop's going to be longer than theirs. We just want to cover that time there. Hopefully it'll give us a win on the 7-11 car.
There you have it, guys, but no question they'd like to see another yellow here.
Well, I don't think they do just yet, because Scott Sharp is doing a wonderful job of allowing Tony to run away from the rest of this field. Nobody can get past Sharp.
And that's what the team wants to see, the 7-11 team, because it stretches that whole space out between the two cars that are first and second right now, George Klotz says. And I like their strategy right now, because everybody really is going to have to make one more stop. 85 laps. We know that Castroneves and a bunch of the other guys can go mid-70s, maybe high 70s. If there's not a yellow, you got to come in for fuel. When he says we need a little bit more time to refuel, it's because they didn't have as much fuel in the tank. So maybe they'll be in the pits an extra 2 seconds. That's what Tony knows. That's what he's trying to stretch the lead out for right now.
We're running the 8-ball space here. They should stop in about 10 laps.
And Scott, isn't that the gamble? Kanaan's going to have to take more fuel on. It's going to be a longer stop, whereas a Dixon or a Castroneves are going to be able to get the stop done quicker because they're not going to have to add as much fuel.
Absolutely, and that's why Tony's driving his heart out right now. He's pushing that car as hard as he can go, about 1 minute and 8 seconds. So he's really actually going and doing a great job here. Finally, they start to get past.
Boy, and Helio Castroneves and Scott Dixon both take advantage. Now it's Dario Franchitti, and he's going to stick his nose in under there and makes it stick. Jack, you've got more?
Well, the drivers' meeting, this was the topic of conversation, what lapped cars do when the leaders are starting to take them over. You remember Danica Patrick, who we ride on board with, was not at all happy, like other drivers were, by some of the tactics used in the last couple of races by cars that were 1 or more laps down. It was no discussion. It was all Brian Barnhart for more than 5 minutes, and he dressed down the entire brigade of drivers, talking about the fact that they needed to respect each other and that the IndyCar Series would not, and I quote, become the WWE and try and change the outcome of a race by moving lap cars over. You saw Scott Sharp took that chastisement to heart as he let the leaders go by.
Well, and Jack, not to put a button on it, but the truth is, I mean, Scott is running for position. I mean, he's still third on the racetrack. This is not one of those cases where he's a lap down, but he's under attack right now from Danica Patrick as they head for 4. Who's going to break first?
Oh, a nice move by Danica Patrick. Underneath, Scott Sharp leaves her braking just a little bit later than Scott Sharp does on the outside. She had the tight line, got the job done. And Marty, to mention what you're saying about Scott Sharp right now, he's doing the right thing. He is back on the gas, trying to keep up there in position because he knows that he's up in the forefront. I spoke to him after drivers meeting. He said, simply, I just need to make sure that I have a car that goes strong. We're not as fast as the leaders, but we will have some different strategy. And that's what's got them in this position right now. So he's right to be out there trying to fight for a position, but you don't want to do any blocking.
Brianne, you've got more on Scott Sharp?
Well, Scott was exactly right. This all came down to strategy. They simply took advantage of staying out during that yellow while their teammate had come in. That's completely strategy to make up time on the track. He is expected to come in less than 10 laps for fuel and tires and to make a little bit of a wing adjustment, and they will be good until the end, you guys.
All right, so let's set it for you. It's Tony Kanaan out front, Helio Castroneves, Scott Dixon, Dario Franchitti, and Danica Patrick is now 5th. Scott Sharp is back to 6th. And we're going to step aside, and we'll be back after this from our ABC stations. And when we do, we'll talk about short pitting. What does that really mean? Honda IndyCar 200, brought to you by Honda, proud sponsor of the Indy Racing League IndyCar Series, and XM Radio. 170 channels to find what turns you on. Are you on? Back here at the Honda IndyCar 200 at Mid-Ohio Sports Car Course, you're looking at the race leader, Tony Kanaan, as he has opened up a very comfortable lead by not pitting and staying out on that last round. He's 3 laps away from being forced to pit, but he's got an 8.9-second lead. That's the gap all the way back to second place. Elio Castroneves. Right behind Castroneves is Scott Dixon, then Dario Franchitti, and then further back, there is the black and blue car, the Motorola 7 of Danica Patrick.
And what a great job she's done this weekend. Not only in just single car qualifying, but also in the top 6 qualifying. Had little problems on the start of the race, Marty, but she has shown everybody here that she can drive these cars in a road course.
Coming off a 3rd place finish last week, running 5th right now. How about our GoDaddy.com trivia question of the week? What IndyCar Series owner has won at Mid-Ohio as a driver? And I think I know everybody on this crew knows the answer, but we'll give the folks at home a little time to think about it. If you ride on board with Danica, watch this car get unloaded right there. And there's the answer, 2 of them, Bobby Rahal and Michael Andretti. All right, let's get an update from pit lane. Jackaroo, what's going on?
Well, Vitor Meira has retired from the competition and gone back to the garage area. Remember, they had to change the Honda engine and change the rear end. Well, in putting it back together, there was obviously a problem with this little part here, a little connector that goes on one of the outlets on the cooling system. It vibrated loose and drained the car of all its coolant and cooked the Honda engine.
Tough break. Vitor will finish 17th. Marco Andretti, the only other car out of the race. Look at this slicing and dicing going on. That's Buddy Rice underneath Sam Hornish. Now remember, Hornish is a lap down. Buddy Rice is running in 11th. Hornish had that off-road excursion in turn 1, brought out our 2nd caution back on lap 48. So Buddy gets on by. Continues to try and fight his way back into the top 10. Thomas Scheckter, the man right in front of him, that is for position in the 2 car. So Tony Kanaan now, we get word, is pulling into pit lane, so the race leader has to come in. Vince?
Tony Kanaan, remember, he told me before the race, pit stops are key. The pit stop and the in and out lap. So as Kanaan comes in and his crew goes to work for 4 Firestones and a full load of fuel, his in lap and now the stop and his out lap may be the difference in him winning this race or finishing 2nd or 3rd. Keep an eye on him as he goes.
Well, and then the big question obviously is he can go the distance now, but everybody else still has to stop.
That's what we're calculating, 60 laps in the race, and you get about 25 on a fuel load, so he will make it to lap 85, which is the conclusion of the race. He knows that, but he's got a big job ahead of him right now.
Well, Elio Castroneves is your race leader over Scott Dixon, but remember, they short pitted. We know he's got to stop. We'll figure it all out when we come back. Let's go side by side. NASCAR Nextel Cup comes to ESPN Sunday, July 29th with the Allstate 400 at the Brickyard. Coverage begins at 1 Eastern with NASCAR Countdown. Back here at Mid-Ohio, from high above, you see Elio Castroneves, our race leader, but of points championship significance. The battle for 2nd. Scott Dixon has it. Dario Franchitti, the points leader, is right behind him in 3rd. So Dixon cuts into the lead, but not as much as if he goes out and gets the race. He would pick up 5 more points.
And we know that these 3 cars need to make 1 more stop. Tony Kanaan, we saw come in the pits and do his pit stop before we went to break, will make it to the end. Now he's currently running in 6th, about 14 seconds behind. You see Castroneves, Dixon, Franchitti, and then a little bit further back from Franchitti is Danica Patrick, who should be just arriving over turn 9 over the brow here very shortly. There she is. And then just a little bit back from her will be Darren Manning and then Tony Kanaan. So now Tony will be pushing as hard as possible. You can see he's starting to gain right now in the 14 car of Darren Manning, and his job is just to run as clean as possible, hard laps, because Marty, a good possibility here right now that after those cars in front do their pit stop, they just might find Tony Kanaan out in front.
Well, and there's one other thing as we go back to second place. We got to remember to point out to everybody, no longer are there fuel settings. You can't lean the motor out to stretch your fuel mileage. Everybody's basically burning at the same ratio.
100% fuel. Very good point. Before, we had a situation where the driver could adjust a knob on the steering wheel and run 100% fuel or 98% fuel, 95, different selections for the driver to come up with different strategies throughout the race. Well, earlier in the season, Honda came up and said, we're just going to run 100% fuel meter all the way through the race. So everybody runs full fuel, full horsepower, and you can't save fuel. Only the driver can adjust his driving style to hopefully save just a little bit of fuel each and every lap.
Tony Kanaan is all over the rear wing of Darren Manning. You're on board. Whoop, little bobble there. That'll give Manning a little bit of breathing room as they come up over 8 and 9. Of course, Kanaan, one of the most fit drivers in the series. In fact, Vince, you got a little more?
Well, Tony Kanaan says that he feels like that's one of the advantages that he has is his fitness because he is a person that works on that 7 days a week. And when he's away from the track in the off season, he really punishes himself to get stronger just for days like this. But he's not the only one. Scott Dixon, who is currently chasing down Helio Castroneves. Dixon, another one that takes his fitness very seriously. And he was telling me today that his fiance, Emma Davies, she's a former world-class runner. There's a look at Emma. And they'll be married in February. She was an 800 distance runner for Great Britain, a world-class runner. They run together, and she was telling me that Scott is much more fit this year than he was a year ago. He'll need that fitness if he's to continue to chase down the leader and win this race today. Jackaroo?
Well, Vince, on the other side of the coin, remember, Darren Manning admitted at Watkins Glen that his arms gave out, that he really didn't have the upper body strength that he needed as he continues, as we look out the backside of his car, to try and hold off the fitter Tony Kanaan. Here's what A.J. Foyt has done. You remember his old crew chief and chief mechanic, Jack Starnes? Well, Starnes has been back in a vacant Waller, Texas, A.J. Foyt Enterprises shop, building a special fitness apparatus for Darren Manning. It's typical A.J. Foyt old school. 2 old shock absorbers connected to a big sprint car steering wheel. They're going to deliver it to Manning and tell him to work on his upper body strength, old school style.
And if you don't, there'll be a pipe wrench wrapped around your head. There's A.J. As we talk about how physical this track is, we've got a comparison for you, and we want to show you. Remember when we were at Watkins Glen, it's 3.3 miles. This is 2.25 miles. Here's what it looks like side by side.
Well, as you see the Glen on the left-hand side, 11 turns. Well, 13 turns here in a shorter track. Much busier here at Mid-Ohio. And the elevation changes, yes, there's elevation changes at Watkins Glen, but here they always seem to be right at the center of the turn as you're hitting the apex of the turn. Then the track falls away, it rises here, falls away again. You can see the steering wheel jitters always from a driver up to 145 miles here underneath the bridge. Very nervous race cars around here at Mid-Ohio, Marty.
A lot more active on this track than at Watkins Glen. Another place that'll be pretty active and stressful will be Sonoma. We'll be out there in a couple of weeks as we're on board with Scott Dixon as he is trying to track down Helio Castroneves. That's how close it is for the race lead here at Mid-Ohio. Dario Franchitti has dropped about a 1.5 seconds behind Dixon. Danica Patrick is 4th. Darren Manning is 5th. Tony Kanaan is 6th, but he's dropped some time. He's having trouble getting around Manning. He's 18 seconds behind the race leaders. What's going to happen? Stay with us as we go side by side. It's country music's night to rock. Country's greatest stars get up close and personal with their biggest fans. 2-hour special, the CMA Music Festival, July 23rd, 9, 8 Central on ABC. There's Helio Castroneves, the race leader.
All right, watch this. It's just fuel. You're going to get a LED readout when they've got enough. No tire. This is what they set up 2 laps ago. Now the card's been laid down as Danica Patrick is in as well. They go to work on Danica Patrick's car. It will be tires for Danica Patrick, who had such high expectations until that altercation early on. Now it'll be up to Scott Dixon. What will he do?
And those laps will tell and unfold in a matter of a few moments. Right now it is Dixon leading Dario Franchitti. Guess what? Number 2 and number 1 in the points.
Well, the benefit for Helio Castroneves, he goes back out on tires that are already up to temperature and up to pressure. His outlap will be a lot easier for him as you watch Scott Dixon go over turn 9 now with 15 laps to go. Danica Patrick will take 2 laps for her to build the temperature and pressure up in those tires.
On this lap, pit.
You heard the call. A.J. Foyt the fourth, and this is a good call because Foyt would have slowed him down. He can take the stop now and go the distance. Vince?
Well, Scott Dixon, remember, a road course specialist, if you will. Second at St. Petersburg earlier this season. First at Watkins Glen just a couple of weeks ago. This will be fuel only, no tires. There you see Ricky Davis, the helmet cam, and their crew chief. And it is a timed fuel stop, and Scott Dixon is away, but was it quick enough?
We'll find out. It looks like, yes, it was. If he can get to speed, and he is, there's your margin.
And the benefit is keeping the same tires on the car, as we mentioned also with Elio. Warm tires, you get up to speed quicker. You don't have a problem with the car twitching underneath you, maybe even costing you a mistake driving off the road.
So there is the margin back, and Dario Franchitti, of course, is your race leader, but remember, he still has to make his stop. So how fast can his crew give him the allotted fuel?
And be sure you'll see that they probably will not take on tires simply from the fact they saw the other leaders do the same situation. Danica is a teammate. She took on tires, but I would be surprised if the 27 car took on tires when it does come in.
I'm amazed he didn't come in this lap because he's being held up at least momentarily. There he goes, trying to get underneath A.J. Foyt the fourth. A.J. lets him around. Now he's got to dig.
And you heard the information coming to me. We need some good laps right now. Remember, light fuel load, warm tires. If he can stretch a bit more of a lead out right now, that's more of a cushion for him when they do come into pit lane for service work.
Well, plus every lap he stays out is less time in the pits because he'll need less fuel.
Absolutely, and everything is calculated here with the team. Remember, they have telemetry, the information from the car beaming back to the engineers in pit lane. They see exactly how much fuel is left on board. They know how much fuel it takes to complete one lap around this race circuit. They will run it close, not too close, but they'll certainly leave them out there as long as possible.
Of the 18 drivers entered here this weekend, Dario has the most experience here at Mid-Ohio. He's raced this course 6 times. His best finish was 3rd back in 1999, and of course, he has had a phenomenal 2007 season. His worst finish of the year was the first race, 7th. He hasn't been out of the top 5 since.
Okay, Bill, we need at least 3 good ones. 3 good ones, you are P1.
And you heard the engineer as they're talking about 3 good laps. So Dario Franchitti right now in control of the race lead. Can he get in and out of pit lane and maintain it? Come back and find out. And he is still lapping at a furious pace. 108 flat the last time by. Here are your Honda lap leaders. Elio Castroneves has led the most. Scott Dixon with 20. Tony with 13. Dario with 5. So none of the bonus points will go to the 2 in the best positions in the championship, as it looks like Elio will take care of that.
And all through these last couple of laps, John Anderson, team manager for Dario Franchitti, has been telling his driver to keep on it, give us another hard one. He always knows he just pushes his driver just a little bit more to coax a little bit more out of him each and every lap, but the laps have been so consistent that he's been doing a terrific job.
Will he peel off this time? Yes. So here it is, the showdown. It's up to the team now. Vince?
This is the time that this team has been talking about all weekend, and it's not just Dario's car, but the other cars on this team as well. The in and out laps and the perfect pit stops. Corey McLish is the fueler. They cannot afford a mistake here. The timing is everything on this time stop, just enough to get to the finish.
4.8 seconds. There goes Scott Dixon by. That's not what he wanted to see. Dixon gets out in front of Dario Franchitti.
And inside Dixon's cockpit right now, inside his helmet, he saw Franchitti joining the track off to the side. So he's calculating a 10-point differential right now between first and second. Knows that he's going to gain, if everything stays smooth and he finishes in this position, an extra 10 points towards the championship.
It would cut the championship lead down to 24. There is Elio Castroneves. He was our pole sitter. He's running in 3rd. And Tony Kanaan is in 4th. And remember, he took his early pit stop but got held up behind Darren Manning. That was the difference. Tony could not make up enough ground. He's in 4th. We're going side by side for the final time before we head to the stripe. Back here at Mid-Ohio Sports Car Course, we've completed 79 laps of the 85 scheduled. Scott Dixon leads, that man right there, points leader Dario Franchitti by 2.6 seconds. And it is a long way back to third. And can it happen again for the third time in IndyCar history? 3 victories in a row? Well, if Scott Dixon holds on, it will happen. Who's done it before? Well, let's turn back the clock. And if you remember Kenny Breck, he had 3 wins at Charlotte, Pikes Peak, and Atlanta back in 1998, and that made A.J. Foyt smile. And then, of course, it was Dan Weldon when he was running with AGR, St. Pete, Japan, and Indy in 2005. And the way they unloaded off the trailer this week, we didn't think that they were going to have this kind of performance. I mean, he qualified 6th. They weren't leading the speed charts every single session like they had been the last couple of races, but here he is once again.
And he did admit his frustration to us when we spoke to him a couple of times throughout the weekend. But you know, it's interesting. Sometimes things just seem to come along to you. But this will be very interesting because qualifying 6th, so far this year, we've not had anybody win a race that's qualified outside the top 4. And 4th was actually Dan Weldon, who actually qualified 4th at Kansas, and he continued to win. So Weldon right now is turning around and chasing his teammate. Dixon himself, and, you know, has been strong for this team, and usually it's been Weldon that's been up front. But I have to say, Weldon did come off the trailer strong. Dixon, not as strong, but he's recovered.
And Vince, you've got more?
Well, Scott, I just want to add on to what Scott was talking about. This team does not ever reach for the panic button. We've not seen it at all this season. And I think there's a lot to be said with that relationship between the driver, Scott Dixon, and his engineer, Eric Bretzman, and also the man that runs this team, Mike Hall. They are always calm, cool, and collected. They realize that they are very good at what they do. And if the car's not right off the trailer, they can adjust it. And Dixon is such a technician and a tactician that he can make sure that he gets the car and that communication with Eric Bretzman, the engineer, just where they want it. There's a look at Mike Hall. But I must add, I've seen Hall run a lot of races. I've never seen him quite as nervous as he's seen today.
Well, he realizes how important the 3 road course races are because that's his driver's forte. 2 more after this. Of course, we've got Sonoma and then Belle Isle. So let's take a look at the points right now. If the race ends with Dixon first, Franchitti second, it cuts to 24. Kanaan moves ahead of Weldon, but they are both triple digits and beyond for 3rd, 4th, and 5th. So it becomes a 2-driver race with 5 to go.
And remember, we have 5 events, as you mentioned. 3 of them are ovals, 2 are road courses, and really no advantage to either one of those drivers as far as what kind of course they like to drive on. Both are efficient on both. The road courses being Sonoma, and then also the new course in Detroit, back to the street course there on Belle Isle.
You saw the nice move by A.J. Foyt the 4th. He must have taken Brian Barnhart's comments to heart. He got out of the way and let Dario Franchitti go by. There's the battle for 3rd, as that's Elio Castroneves in front of Tony Kanaan. You know, we mentioned our schedule 2 weeks. The series returns to ESPN2, the Firestone IndyCar 400 at Michigan. It'll be on ESPN2 Sunday, August 5th at noon Eastern. And I don't think we'll have to worry about the British Open or any other golf tournament getting in our way. Again, thank you to everybody for switching over with us when we had to start on ESPN. Back on ABC now for the final closing laps. And it is all about Scott Dixon right now down the back straightaway. He's coming up on lap traffic. That's Kosuke Matsuura, who is in 12th position. There is Dario, and Dario's hoping that the lap traffic sort of gives him an assist and allows him to reel him in.
This is where Scott Dixon looks up ahead, sees the 55 of Kosuke Matsuura just ahead of him, along with the 8 car of Scott Sharp, and he hopes he gets the timing right where he comes upon them in the straightaway where he has a chance to get past them, not getting caught up to them in the turns where he could get just all bottled up from the drivers in front.
Well, and here's one of the problems for those 2 guys. They are battling for position. Sharp is 11th, Matsuura is 12th, albeit a lap down.
Now Dixon's not close enough to be able to get any type of a run going on Matsuura up into the keyhole. to get the power down coming out of the keyhole here onto the straightaway and hope that he gets a bit of a draft going down towards the kink here. 3,000 feet, this long back straightaway. Koski sees him in the mirror, just lets him go by through the kink, 155 miles an hour there onto 170 here down towards turn 4.
So that puts Koski a lap down, and still one more lap vehicle to get through. And you can see there is Daryl Franchitti. He's going to have to negotiate this as well. Fiance, Ava, she realizes she's on national TV right now, a little embarrassed. It's okay. Franchitti, the white flag will be this time by. I don't think there's anywhere close enough time unless something happens to Scott right now. He's got this car on a rail. And I'm talking about Dixon, not Sharp, in front of him. There it is, white flag. 2.25 miles for Scott Dixon. Through turn 1, up towards the keyhole.
Be smart with his character in front of you.
There is Dario Franchitti, well back. Further back, it's Elio Castroneves and Tony Kanaan. What a drive for Kanaan, and what great strategy. Remember, he was 17th after the first lap incident, sending Marco Andretti out of the race, and he comes back and what looks like will be a 4th place run.
And I'm not sure, Marty, that being stuck behind Darren Manning for quite a few of those laps, looked like he had maybe a faster car than Darren did, but he seemed to lose the advantage that he had from being in the pit lane. Maybe he would have had an other shot of being a little further up front.
Would have been interesting, we'll never know, but right now it's all about Scott Dixon. Up over turn 9, keeps the car from going too far over that rise where it becomes so loose. There's Dario Franchitti into the carousel for the final time. The 3rd driver in series history to win 3 in a row. He joins Weldon and Kenny Breck. His 9th career win.
Okay,
3rd
buddy,
this season.
job.
There it is, the double checkers. As another 10 points carved off the championship lead.
Good job, man.
The battle for 3rd goes to Elio Castroneves. It'll be Franchitti 2nd, Elio 3rd, Tony Kanaan 4th, and Danica Patrick has her best career road course finish. Her prior best was 6th. She finishes 5th. And let's check in with Vince Welch.
Mike Hall just took a big sigh of relief and shook his head. Why so tense during this race today?
Well, because of what happened. Mid-Ohio historically has always been a race like what you guys got to see on television today. It's all about track position. It's, you know, that's what makes it so difficult. And you saw guys, as soon as they got to that magic number, they came. And so your driver has to drive always to a number for that last segment. And I don't know, you could have a better guy than Scott Dixon driving that last segment, knowing what he has to do.
A better driver nor a better crew, because they were on their money today on the other side of the pit wall.
Certainly were. A margin of victory of 2.6 seconds as Scott Dixon cuts the margin in the championship chase. This is getting very interesting. We're going to go side by side. Of course, we'll talk to the winner in victory lane.